let's just say this, if we have 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, right? And we can only think of 20 of those thoughts, well, where are the rest of them going? They're going in the body. And generally, they find a home in the body. I think what I've learned about me is that the softer I am, the more playful I am with myself, then the less resistance I have in life. And if I have less resistance, then life actually does become more playful. The inner child is just the person that's like showing up when we're not aligned with our soul. So a lot of times the work is like, okay, how do we heal the inner child? Because the inner child will throw a tantrum. You know, when you're not aligning with your true self and your path, the only way for it to be heard, the soul to be heard, is like to throw a tantrum or to act out, right? So for me, the inner child is really like the soul's voice.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Awareness Club podcast. Today, my guest is a living proof that internal truth and intuition are guiding you towards discovering your path. More than 25 years ago, she was traveling to French Riviera with 2 bags and 1 dog. And today, it's facilitating and helping people discovering themselves and elevating themselves. I have with me Rhonda Hudson.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
So, tell me about yourself, about how was this dream bringing you here?
Well, I would have to say that I thought my desire, you know, I love to say this, you tell God your plan and then you make him laugh, right? Because it never ends up being that way. You know, the plan that you have is never really the direction that you end up going in. Well, especially for me. So I was in chiropractic school in Atlanta, Georgia, and I had this dream. And at this time in my life, I was journaling. So like every day I was journaling my dreams, I was journaling my feelings, I was journaling a lot about what I was experiencing in life. And so when I had this dream, I didn't really have an idea what it was. I was walking down this cobblestone road, looking up, and I saw this sign and it said Niswa Soka. Now, I don't even speak French now, so I definitely couldn't pronounce it back then. And I was on this cobblestone road holding these 2 little girls' hands. And so when I woke up, I wrote down what that dream was. I wrote down those words, not knowing and not really thinking, this is important. You know, it's just something, another one of my dreams, right?
Okay.
And so then a few days went by and I was like, I wonder what those words are. And then I would tell people, you know, I had this dream and I was on this cobblestone road and I saw these words and, you know, people were like, okay, Rhonda, whatever, you know, that word, whatever. And it's like, then time was coming through, like going on. It was a couple weeks, then it was a month, then it was a couple months. And at this point, I was like, okay, wait a second. All I can think about is this dream. All I can think about are these 2 words. And I need to figure out what this is. Now, you have to remember, we're in 1999. There's no Google, or not really the way that we use it now, right? So it was just kind of like, somehow I have to figure this out. And there was this burning desire inside me that was like, Rhonda, just talk to anyone and everyone you can meet and just ask them. Well, first of all, I didn't pronounce the words properly, but I would say, you know, I had this dream, and then I would, you know, it was like I'd go to someone else and say, I had this dream, and I'd have this dream. So I was just always constantly telling people about this dream that I had. And so finally, I was in this bar in Atlanta, and I was just talking to this guy next to me, and he was from France, and he was from Paris. And he owned a nightclub in Paris, and we were just talking, blah, 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 blah. And I said, you know, I had this dream. And the look on his face, I still have it. And, you know, it's like, it's in my memory still. And he looked at me and I told him about these words and he goes, do you want to write those down for me? And I said, sure. So I wrote the words down and he goes, I think that's Nice, France. I said, what? He's like, that's Nice, France. Just, you know, go on the internet and check it out. Because he goes, that food, that soka word that you just wrote down for me, that comes from Niçoise. That's like a tradition. And I was like, oh, I've never been to Europe. So how would I know what these words were, you know? And so I think it was a part of that. And then I called my parents that evening when I got home. Now you have to remember, I'm 29 at this stage. So my parents are like, finally, she's in school. She's going to accomplish something. She's going to finally, make a commitment to her life. Our daughter's finally doing something that she's going to be able to, move through life with. She's going to have a career. And sure enough, I called them and said, like, I'm going to move to Nice. And they're like, oh, what? And this is after I went onto the internet and finally found out that niçoise was a food and tradition and people from Nice, France, And so that's what brought me here.
And how do you see dreams now? You said that even before having this dream, you are noting your dreams.
Yeah.
It's an old passion. You are following them. You find in them clues.
Well, I was 4 years old when I would sit in my room and talk to Jesus. And at that stage in my life, now I say he was my imaginary friend. If you've seen the movie If, I love that movie because it's like Jesus was my imaginary friend. But we would sit in my room and have conversations, and my mom would listen. And, I love her protection and the fact that she said to me at a very young age, Rhonda, it's okay to be in here and talk to Jesus, but let's not tell other people that you do that, okay? And that was a part of my life when I kind of dimmed that light. I stopped being who I truly was, I guess, at that stage, a part of my path. And I know now it was a choice. So at that age, even when I was younger, 8, 9, 10 years old, I would write. I would write because I couldn't really express the conversations, the angels that I would see, the things that I would experience. And so what was my biggest gift to me was to write about it. If I couldn't express it outside of myself, then I'm just going to write. And so that was kind of like my writing journal, like that was my relationship with the invisible, you can say, is to write about what I saw, because I couldn't really go out and share that, with other people.
Did you had any other prophetic dreams, or this was a major point in your life that made you align with your path?
I would probably, if I would go back, if I even had those journals and all the things that I wrote in, I would probably say that they all align to where I am at right now. But when I had this dream, this was such a pivotal point in my life because I was 29 years old. I wanted to be a chiropractor because my best friend in San Francisco is a chiropractor. I wanted to open up a healing wellness place in Belize. And so I thought that was my path. And at this time, it was like God was, the universe, the divine, was directing me somewhere else. And so I really had this anxiety in me about what I wrote. Like if I think about it, it was a couple words. The dream was a couple words walking on a cobblestone road, holding 2 little girls' hands. How profound is that at the moment? But when I had this anxiety and had to talk to every single person I met until I figured out what it was, then it was like that was the real pivotal point that I can remember from this time. Is like, this is where my path took a big, direction. Skipped to a different continent, so it was big. It was really big.
How did you start everything here? Because I know that today you are doing breathwork, you are doing Kundalini, you are doing a lot of different things. Let's start with, what do you relate most?
Ooh, the soul purpose coaching.
Okay.
So Kundalini and breathwork for me are just the tools that I bring into soul purpose coaching. Why do I love soul purpose coaching and what it means for me is that every soul on this planet has a purpose. Maybe they know about it. Maybe they don't. Maybe they're ready to find out. Maybe they aren't. But when you are, I want to be there. Because the way that I describe soul purpose coaching, it's like, let's say we're at Walmart and we're going down an aisle that's all a bunch of puzzles. Puzzles, like you can have 500 pieces or 250 pieces or 1,000 pieces. And you have all these beautiful designs of the puzzles. And we're walking down this aisle and you're like, ooh, which one resonates best for me? And you pick out that box. right? You can see how beautiful that puzzle is. It's like, wow, that's what I want to create. But you open that box and you have 2,500 pieces. And you're like, where do I start? Right? I think for a lot of us, we go through life and we kind of know our path and we're trying all these different things. But then we get to a certain part in our life and we're like, what am I here for? And maybe that's a time of awakening that all of a sudden has shifted your life and you are looking for ways to understand more about who you are. Or maybe it's just a time your kids, you're an empty nester, they call moms who let their kids go off and they're like, now what's my purpose? I mean, there's so many times in our lives that purpose really comes up. And I really love to play with this because I feel like I can meet people wherever they are. And I think our purpose changes in our life. And so I like to help them find those pieces in this big puzzle, and put it together.
And how do you do that?
Through Kundalini yoga, through breath work, through different types of tools and things that I've picked up through my journey. And if you come to my house, I have like thousands of books. One of the biggest teachers for me was A Course of Miracles. Do you know that book? Have you ever heard of A Course of Miracles?
No.
Okay. It's this big blue book, and it's this Jewish woman and this man who channeled Jesus. And this was in the 1950s. Her name's Helen. And she channeled Jesus as a Jewish woman, him as a psychologist. Like, they were in this total academic world. And the way that she writes is very Shakespearean. It's really interesting. But this was a big part of my life of unwinding and unraveling because I was identified. I had a lot of patterns and programs that, I came in with. And I also think that I picked up on my way of being Rhonda. And so all of these tools, and there's 365 days of lessons in there, and one of them, I love this one, is you set your watch and every hour your watch goes off. And for 5 minutes, you sit in stillness and you do that for 8 to 10 hours during your day. That's one of the lessons, So it's like I did all of those practices and stuff. So I have a lot of fun little tools. And I did, when I taught Kundalini the other day, we did an exercise called Forgiving to Remember. And it was this exercise where you had to give forgiveness a name, right? So what would you call it? Like, what does it look like? Or what does it sound like? And it's like, there's so many fun things that we can do to help us really learn how to forgive. Because when I work with people, there's usually something we're holding on to. And it's not always about forgiving others. A lot of it's about forgiving ourselves. And a lot of it's about when we betrayed ourselves, right? So how do we learn how to forgive that? But if we can give forgiveness a name like, ta-da, then all of a sudden it's a little bit lighter. And forgiving ourselves becomes a little bit more easy and a little bit more fun.
While listening to you, I feel that at the core of everything that you do is playfulness.
I do like to play. I think people think I'm super serious, but when you really get to know me, you're going to see a kid. If you want to say, what's your favorite thing or what do you want to do today? I'm like, let's play games. I love any games. I'll learn new games. I don't care. I love to play. And sometimes I take life a little bit too serious. And then the playful Rhonda needs to come up and say, oh, we're taking life a little bit too serious right now. Let's come back to that place where you soften.
And also making fun of ourselves, not to be too stiff, huh?
Yeah. I think what I've learned about me is that the softer I am, the more playful I am with myself, then the less resistance I have in life. And if I have less resistance, then life actually does become more playful.
And did you saw the transformation in people while bringing playfulness to the ones that, especially to the ones that are not doing it?
It's one of my favorite things to do is when I work with people who are so serious and they have big jobs and they have a lot of influence with a lot of people, and maybe they were born into a culture that was heavier than, coming from California. And when I start to use playful things, they look at me like, what are you doing? I'm not going to do this. But then all of a sudden, they become even more playful than me. And it's like really bringing them back in alignment with that childlikeness that maybe they lost as a little kid because everything became too serious, maybe too serious in their home. Maybe they needed to strive for a certain education, or they came from a family that's super high achievers, and playfulness was not a part of that high achieving. It was all about being serious, all about doing the work, all about that. And so when I see them become playful and silly and stuff, I see that inner child really having space to be heard, space to create from. And I think that's probably one of the most exciting things that I do when I do my work, is to be able to connect to that inner child with them, and don't think that I don't push them. I push them. Sometimes they don't really like me because trying to get to that inner child isn't always so easy because they're here. And the inner child doesn't live here. The inner child that's here. Right.
So do you help them into meeting their inner child? And let's define a little bit what means the inner child.
So, there are so many variations of the inner child, and you can do inner child work, and that can be something that's like a shadow work, or you can do inner child work, just identifying what your inner child's trying to connect to you and stuff. But the way I really look at inner child is that it's the soul's voice. And the inner child is just the person that's like showing up when we're not aligned with our soul. So a lot of times the work is like, okay, how do we heal the inner child? Because the inner child will throw a tantrum. When you're not aligning with your true self and your path, the only way for it to be heard, the soul to be heard, is like to throw a tantrum or to act out, right? So for me, the inner child is really like the soul's voice.
And do you feel that people that are more aligned to them, they're more playful?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the greatest discovery. And is like, when you sit down and the playfulness comes out and people are childlike and you're silly. And well, look at kids play. You just watch them play and you think, one minute they're mean to each other, the next minute they're laughing, the next minute they're cuddling and hugging and things like that. And you just kind of see, but none of it means anything. It's just them expressing themselves, without having any rules. And yeah, I think when we really start to live our authentic selves, we let each other off the hook. And when we let each other off the hook, we're able to be more playful.
Now, I would like to come back to your work and
Yeah.
to something that you said as a concept, Kundalini Yoga.
Yeah.
What is Kundalini Yoga, first of all?
Okay. I'm giving you my definition of Kundalini. Kundalini Yoga is a technology. It is a technology that uses sound, like a sound current, through mudras. It uses breath, which is so powerful. Breath moves energy in your body. It's the very first thing that we're given when we come into a human form is we breathe, right? So we're connecting to something that allows us to be alive here. And when, let's just say this, if we have 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, right? And we can only think of 20 of those thoughts, well, where are the rest of them going? They're going in the body. And generally, they find a home in the body. So Kundalini Yoga lets you identify where those thoughts that don't serve you are, and you move them, because then you create more space. So for me, Kundalini, through mudra, through movement, through breath, through stillness, really is a technology that allows you to discover your inner world, your inner reality. And that's a really beautiful place to start to discover.
Would you say that is a practice that it's mostly done in group, or you can do it at home alone?
Definitely. There is like so many YouTubes with amazing Kundalini yoga teachers. What I love to harness myself is I love it in a group. And the reason why is because when we're releasing energy together, when we're connecting together, when our hearts are connecting, there is something so powerful. And I'm not going to say this quote correct because I don't know the exact verbiage of it, but it's like in the Bible, there's a quote that says, when two or more are gathered together, you can move mountains. Well, that's what a Kundalini yoga group session does for me. It's like you're bringing this incredible technology and you're allowing things to shift at such a rapid speed and align so much that when people walk out that door, they're a new version of themselves. And that's incredible, I think.
And to define it even more, what would you say that practically changes or can change in your body or in your mind?
Well, so you're with Kundalini, it's strange. I mean, if you've never done Kundalini before, you're like doing all these weird things with your fingers and you're looking at the tip of your nose. And today we were doing an exercise like this, and you're pushing on that pineal gland. So basically what Kundalini yoga is doing is it's changing your body on so many different levels. It's changing it from a physical level. It's changing it from an energy level. So you're moving the energy in your body. You're tapping into your electromagnetic field. You're tapping into the coherence of your heart. You're connecting that to the pineal gland through many different breaths that we use. And what you're doing is you're changing your chemistry and you're changing your gene expression. And when you can change your gene expression by focusing on releasing anger in the liver, because we'll do an entire session just focused on the liver and the anger that we maybe have stored in that liver. And you don't think, you're like, well, how do you do that? And it's these sequence of movements and they're so strange and so weird. But when you walk out, you're like, something shifted. And what I love to see is I see it in their eyes. It's like the seed of the soul, and that soul has been reconnected because that anger's moved. And they didn't even know it was there. So they walk out and they're like, oh my God, I feel so much better. Or they have to go home and sleep after that because they're like, I'm so tired, because they had been holding on to that anger for so long. And this is the power of Kundalini yoga for me.
And how it is to facilitate this? How do you feel the buildup of the energy? How do you feel the room and each person? How do you guide?
So as a facilitator for Kundalini, I prepare the class days in advance. So I start listening to what the class, what's being guided through me. So as a facilitator, I become a channel for not only the consciousness of Kundalini and Guru Ram Dass, which is my direct lineage through Kundalini yoga, but it's really that merging of Christ consciousness for me and this entire Kundalini consciousness. And I become a channel in the room. So already days before, I'm starting to prep because there's 3,000 Kriyas and meditations to do. So we never remember it. And if I have taught the same class before, it's completely different in the day that I teach it based on what I'm receiving the days before of what needs to come through for who's going to be showing up. And then when I'm there, it's like all I'm doing is channeling this incredible energy, and I'm holding space for everyone to do whatever they need to do. So if they need to release something, if they need to let go, if they need to surrender, or if they need to align themselves, then I hold that space for them to do the transformation at whatever speed, whatever rate that they're ready to, whatever they're ready for. All I do is just hold that space. And so that's how I facilitate a Kundalini class.
So going a step even further,
Yes.
what means to hold the space?
Holding space for me is going without any expectations, any conditions of what the class needs to look like, feel like, be like, sound like. So I make myself laugh a lot. So when you say childlike, I laugh at myself a lot because I might come in and think, okay, this is the way I'm going to lead the class. But when I allow my body to become a vessel and a vehicle for that consciousness, then the class goes the way the class is meant to go. And it's me following the energy of what that looks like. So everything I might have planned, all the music that I pick out and I do every single class before I teach it so that I can know what it feels like in this moment and what I'm receiving. But even when I go in and I hold that space, and this is also with breath work, I might have a plan or an idea of what it's going to be like, but it could totally go somewhere totally different. And so holding space for me is about being able to be in that communion with myself to be able to let whatever needs to come in and move through. So I often like to say it's like I love to hold space while God's meditating through me.
And for some that are listening, maybe sounds weird. How do you put together Jesus Christ and Kundalini yoga? How do you merge the cultures, the belief systems? How do you pick the tools that work for you and the stuff that resonates with you?
How do I do that? Well, for me, there's no real separation between Kundalini yoga and Christ consciousness or
Obviously.
Jesus.
Looks like.
It's like, it's a frequency. And so for everyone out there, it's like, there's no difference. There's no separation. There's different ways to express it. So I think Christ consciousness, working with Jesus, which is my imaginary friend, and Kundalini yoga, their expressions are different. But the feeling, the frequency, the vibration, it's the same for me, So how do I describe that? I really don't. I like to say, feel it. Feel what you feel when you're in a class. Take your mind out of it. And that's what Kundalini really does. It's an inner work. Like in an hour, you're doing all this inner work. And, you'll start to see that things are different vibrations and you'll see what feels good for you. And I really think that for people, it's like follow what feels good. Go to the feeling inside. Don't go into a definition of what Jesus is or Kundalini is or Buddhism is. Go into the feeling of what those things feel like. And you're going to find that they're pretty similar.
And once they are resisting through time, they're having their own truth because otherwise they will not be present.
100%.
Now you were speaking also about breath work.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say about breath work, about its importance, when to do it, even for people that are not arriving to Kundalini yoga? Because in the end, breath work is also yang energy and is creating the heat inside. So how would you describe breath work?
It doesn't have to be yang. There is a breath, I love this breath technique. It's called conscious breathing, basically. And it is so soft and so gentle. And it's like, when I feel it, I feel like I'm being cradled because the breath is so easy and it almost feels so natural. So how do I describe breath work? There's so much. You have Wim Hof. I love Wim Hof. Let's say that I get stuck in a thought and that thought keeps repeating. So we can imagine a hamster in a wheel, right? The hamster's just running in the wheel and you're like, oh, I can't get off the wheel because the thought keeps going and I can't seem to let it go. So that's when I bring Wim Hof in because it's powerful. It's going to move stuff. I'm doing breath holds, like I'm really getting in there. And I find that a lot of times for me, when I have those thoughts that get stuck, I like to bring in those stronger breaths. That's me. They work for me really well. But when I really love to feel that connection in my heart so much, and there's nothing that's really reoccurring, or I don't feel like I need to release or surrender anything, then things like conscious, connective breathing is so loving and so kind and so beautiful. And so that's the beauty of breath work, is that you have somatic breathing, you have rebirthing breathing. All of them are bringing a different rhythm that allows the body to connect to it and unleash something for you specifically. And I think people would be drawn to what resonates with them, really.
But you were searching for yourself in order to discover who you are since your 20s, or when did you start meditation?
Well, Jesus was my imaginary friend, so I've been searching for myself for a long time. So no, I would say that I've been in and out of my spiritual path or alignment for a lot of my life. Even when I was 16 and 17, I always felt a little different. I felt alone. I felt I was shy, but no one would ever know that because I was, chatty, but it was really never truly me. So I believe that I was always on a path and I was aware. I just didn't know how to show up completely, if that makes sense. I didn't know how to live that path at 17 and 18, even though my favorite things were like communing with God, or, talking to Jesus, or seeing angels, or just like being in stillness. I mean, a lot of my life when I was younger was being in my room by myself. I really loved being alone because for some reason, when I was alone, the voices were louder, the feeling was stronger, and I didn't let myself be swayed or choose to follow a different path than that. Like, when you're around people, they're like, let's do this. And then you're like, okay, let's do this, right? Because you just don't really know who you are. So I would say that throughout my life, on and off, I was aware of my path. And then I found that what really brought me into my path was always being off my path, if that makes sense. So it was like that contraction expansion type thing. It was like, oh, let's party really, really, really hard. And then all of a sudden I'd have an epiphany and I'd be like, oh, hold on. Who is Rhonda?
Yeah.
It's like the beginnings of the I am were starting to surface. Like, who is that? Start to question this rehearsed Rhonda. Because I really started to see that Rhonda was rehearsed. Her life was dictated by what other people thought she should do. And that wasn't a bad thing. It was just that at this point in my life is when I started to identify that,
And you were mentioning Jesus. So how did your faith and the Christianism blend into your spiritual path?
I love this question because at 18, I walked out of that church and told my mom I would never, ever, ever step back into a church again. So I had a personal relationship with Jesus or Christ, or that consciousness, at such a young age that the early development in church was really fascinating because I was in Sunday school. What do you do in Sunday school? You like join all the other kids and you sing and it's fun and it's like exciting and stuff like this. But when I had to go to the big church, and I came from a non-denominational church, when I had to sit in the I don't even know what they call it, congregation, something like that, of everyone with the pastor standing up there, that's all of a sudden when I didn't connect to Christ. That was all of a sudden I would walk in and I'm a sinner. I judge, it was really heavy. And I just knew at that point, like, that's not my path. And that's not the Jesus I know. And that's not the Christ consciousness that I know. And so because my mom was very much into religion and wanted my brother and I to have some kind of foundation, so that, I love that story actually. If you build your house on the sand, every time a storm comes, it's wiped away. But when you build your house on the foundation, then no matter what storm comes, you might lose a window, a door, or a panel off the roof, but you've built it on something. So that was really my mom's initiation for us, is like, build your life on a foundation, because no matter what, you can weather the storms then.
So speaking about this foundation, do you consider that the church itself, it's putting this sinner concept on people, and it's affecting the belief and the elevation itself?
Our relationship with the Bible, our relationship with all these stories, if we look at it from a historical point of view, which is kind of what's represented in the churches, it doesn't make sense. This book is about states of consciousness. So when I show up, and if there's any kind of label, or if there's any kind of judgment in something, then I know that that's just a system that's still running, but that's not my system, And I think everyone has their path. And I think, church has been a foundation for a lot of people through their awakening, through their awareness, through, it's given them a lot of depth. And so I wouldn't say that anything is really bad. I just think that we come into a different frequency and vibration as we evolve on our path. And sometimes the church is what someone picks throughout their life. And then other times it's like, hey, you know what? There's more out there. And I like to try to choose things that are about love. And love doesn't have conditions, nor does it have boundaries. So that center thing doesn't really work for me.
And that's great. Now coming back to your path.
Yes.
You arrived on the French Riviera. What happened?
I'm going to just step you back to the day that I got on the plane, because it was another very monumental, pivotal point for me. And I had told my parents I was leaving. I packed everything. I was staying with my really dear friend. Her name's Amy, and she was with me through all of this, unraveling of what this dream meant. And so I had been dating this guy, and his dog ate my black bra. Okay. And I'm like, I had this panic. Oh my God, I can't go to France without a black bra. We got to go to Victoria's Secrets. And my friends were having this going away party for me. And even at this place, even though this was a big awakening for me, I didn't really know what that meant. Okay. I just knew I had to follow something. So we went to Victoria's Secrets, and I said, okay. And at this time, I was wearing the bra size of 34C, and it was the most popular bra. And I'm like, okay, I'm going back. And so we both walk into this Victoria's Secrets store in this mall, and she somehow gets stuck in the front, and I go to the back, and they don't have the bra size. And I think, oh my God, this is an omen. I'm not supposed to go to France, because you can imagine, I didn't know French. I've never been to Europe. I've never been to France, and I didn't speak the language. And this is in 2000. So, I mean, all of a sudden my nervous system was like, this is crazy. Your parents are right. You're totally losing your mind. You're moving to a country with your two bags and a dog. I mean, who does that, right? And so I walk back out, and there's my girlfriend sitting there talking to this man. And this man was dressed in a caftan. And he's sitting there dressed in a caftan. And I remember him, he had this backpack on. And I'm like looking at her, and she just was sitting there staring at him. There was no conversation. And he turns to me and he goes, I've brought you something for your journey. And I went, what? What do you mean who are you? And I'm getting at this time, I'm feeling so much anxiety in myself, because I'm getting on a plane less than 24 hours and I don't even know where I'm going. And here I am, and I'm thinking, my friend's telling this man that I'm going somewhere, and how did he bring me something? What's going on here? So you can imagine, it's like a spaghetti ball of things happening all at one time. And all of a sudden, being in his presence, I felt this in complete peace. But he's like, let's move into the middle of the mall. And I'm like, okay. So we walk out with him in the middle of the mall. And I'm just going to describe what he looks like because it's so tattooed in my brain. He had a caftan on. He had a backpack on. Now, I'm from California, so I'm pretty liberal. Like, I hear names like Tuesday, Daisy, like it's normal to have a different name if you live in California. So when I was there with him, he said, I'm Avatar. Now, I thought that was a name, and I'm like, oh, that's a cool name. So here's this guy in a caftan with a backpack. He's brought things for me. His name is Avatar. We're standing in the middle of the mall. And he's unzipping his backpack and he pulls out like 6 or 7 metaphysical books and he goes, I've brought this for your journey, for your trip. And I'm thinking, what is going on? Like, how did you even know that I was leaving somewhere, And the panic is still rising at this time because now none of this is making sense, right? I'm getting on a plane less than 24 hours. I have 2 suitcases, a dog. Now I went to go get a black bra. It's not there. That's an omen. Now here's this man telling me he brought things for my journey. What is happening? Like, this is crazy. And so all of a sudden, my girlfriend, just tears start running down her face. And I could feel this panic and this anxiety just kind of dissipating from me. And I'm sitting there and he hands me these books and she's crying, but not from a place of like fear or sadness. It was this unbelievable feeling of joy. And we're sitting there, or standing there really, and he goes, step into me. And I'm like, what? And he goes, just step into me. And the minute that I stepped into, let's say now, we would call it a field. Like before, I would have never called it a field, right? But I stepped into him and he said to me, I'm always in your heart. So whenever you need me, whenever anything comes up that feels too big for you, find me there. And I felt so good and I felt so light and so like I had so much power and strength and energy. And I'm like, cool, thanks so much. And my girlfriend and I left him. I took all my books. I'm like, thanks, Avatar. That was really great. That was amazing. And we went to my going away party. I got on the plane the next day. I landed in Paris and there was a strike. And I thought, oh my God, well, how do I get to Nice if there's no planes, no trains, no automobiles? I'm like, this is a movie, right? And I called my friend Amy and I said, she's this incredible graphic designer. And I'm like, I need you to go back to Victoria's Secrets and I need you to go ask that guy Avatar, what do I do now? So she's like, okay, Rhonda, because there was no way for me to get to Nice and I didn't know what I was supposed to do in Paris. And it was like 7 or 8 days before I could get to Nice. So I'm like, what do I do now? And so, of course, she goes at her lunch break and she calls me and she goes, Rhonda, there's no men that work at Victoria's Secrets. And that's when the coin dropped. Because all of a sudden, it was like, here comes this being, Avatar, that shows up at this moment where I was like, I'm not going to get on that plane. I'm not going to follow through because I'm crazy. I don't know who goes to a country they don't know anyone or speak a language. And I got it at that point. I knew that there was something bigger driving me, like there's no man that works at Victoria's Secrets. And we laughed. I'm like, I thought he worked at Victoria. She goes, so did I. It was just so weird and so funny, like it's a comedy, really. It's a comedy. But yeah, so that's how I got here. And then finally, 7 days later, I ended up taking a very crowded train to Nice.
How would you define that man today?
He was me in another version of me.
Do you feel that?
Yes, completely.
Okay.
Yeah. It was like, he was like, portal back into this timeline to just let me know it's okay. Just trust. Black bra or not, it's going to be all right.
It happened again?
What, seeing him?
Seeing him or seeing in a different form?
Yeah, he came through a dream. So, and this wasn't too long ago. So, 2024, I was getting ready to do a Kana journey. So, if you don't know what Kana is a plant medicine that comes from South Africa. And so a friend of mine in Mujan, she was holding the ceremony there. And so I was a day before, well, actually, it was a few days before this anxiety came. And I was like, okay, why? Why don't I want to go do this journey? And so I allowed myself to kind of just sit with that for a moment. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to cancel the journey because there was just too much anxiety going on. And what the anxiety or what the feeling at that moment was like, I don't want to come back here to forget again. That's what I was going through at this time. I don't want to come back to forget. And it was just something that was going in my mind, like, I can't do this again. I can't come back to forget. And so that night I went to sleep, and in my dream, he showed up and he said, I'm you. So you didn't forget. And feeling a lot of emotion from that. So now I go back and I think about that, and I just think, oh my God, he was always in my heart. He's always been in my heart because he's me. And that was just another part of my path recently that made me realize that everything is always really perfectly working out, even if we don't understand it.
Why is deprogramming such an important word for you?
I didn't even realize that to get to the true self, I had to let go of all the identifications. So I didn't even realize how deep they were. I'm feeling very emotional right now talking about this. So in January this year, 2026, I went and did a retreat using psychedelics. And so it was using not mushrooms, but they're called truffles. And in this retreat, it was this unraveling and unwinding of the identification, but it wasn't just identification of Rhonda. It was identification of programs that were collectively in the humanity's consciousness. And I feel that when we let go of those, we're more connected to who we are, which is really energy. The programs are like that caterpillar, right? Caterpillars are small, but when you look at them, they're thick, they move slow, they're lethargic, but then they cocoon, right? And that's where all the transformation comes. And it's like, how do we know that cocooning isn't painful? Because imagine, here is this caterpillar all of a sudden stuck in this place and it can't move anymore, right? And then the metamorphosis takes place. And then here comes this beautiful light being, so colorful. And that's why I really feel deprogramming, unwinding, unraveling the self-identification is a key part to probably a majority of our awakening or humanity's awakening.
On the other side, deprogramming can be on a psychosomatic level, even emotional level, and can be with psychedelics, as you said, which is at the limit now in our society between we should do this, but there are also ancient techniques, and it was used for thousands of years in rituals, pre-Christianism and so on. So, but it is such a different perspective of our approach to it, because on one side you are having yourself looking into the mirror and seeing what shades you are taking off. On the other hand, you are having the psychedelics which are having an entity behind. Did you feel guided?
First of all, I don't believe that plant medicine is everyone's path. I definitely was called into it. I felt it in my heart. I I felt connected to plant medicine even in my 20s. So I started doing sweat lodges in Mexico in my 20s, and they would smoke peyote there. And so it was always something that was very just familiar for me. And maybe because my heritage, I'm 23% Native American Indian, so maybe somewhere deep inside me, that just feels really, really natural. So I really feel like there someone said the other day there's 1001 names of God, and I really feel like there's probably that many paths to awakening, to enlightenment, to spirituality or awareness or alignment even. And everyone will be called to whatever path that is. I really believe that if you're ready to, well, I spent a majority of my life seeking my path. And
I think we all do.
yeah.
Or
And, well, yeah, I know what you mean. And the thing is that every time there was something different showing up for me, and it was maybe old practices and Indian practices and sitting in a puja room doing my 108 beads for 7 hours a day, doing the Course of Miracles, which is a very Western world unwinding, unraveling, where you have to sit and do 365 lessons, questioning who you are. Unwinding. There's a guy named Jose Silva. His work's incredible about unwinding, letting go of self-identification. You and I have someone in common that we both love, which is Bashar. And that's a process also of, living the most excitement. And all of that, all of these tools are ways for people to really become who they truly and always have been and start to live that authentic self. And so whatever path it might be, if it's psychedelics, plant medicine, heart stuff, DMT, if it's in a clinical setting, if it's with a shaman, if it's reading 365 lessons of the Course of Miracles, if it's hypnosis, meditation. I love Dr. Joe Dispenza. I love his work. I love how he has brought science to metaphysics and is showing through science how it all works. So for those people out there who feel like, wait, this is all a bunch of, fluffy, stuff or whatever you want to call it. None of it's real. It's just hocus pocus. Well, this man has dedicated his life to show scientifically that there is something moving in the brain and moving in the body, and it heals. So there's so many paths out there, for us to follow. And I think the way that we do that is to listen to our bodies and really tune into what is calling us. And it might be different at different times in our lives.
before coming to Joe Dispenza, I just wanted to touch your experience with plant medicine, with different substances, because it's not only what they produce in our body and what they allow us to feel or to facilitate the internal process. It's also their presence. And here I wanted to arrive on the spiritual side of the entity itself. Did you felt them? Did you felt guided? What is your input on this?
May I share my ayahuasca?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So it was about, Kate, one of my dear friends who owned Stars of Mars in Monaco, we did ayahuasca together, but I think it was 7 years before we actually worked with the plant ayahuasca that I had known it was calling me. The plant was calling me. And I was like, okay, I don't even know. I've never even been to the Amazon, South America, as far as Peru or Brazil. So it wasn't calling me that way because I had never had a desire to go there.
But you definitely know what is a calling.
You do. You know, it's strong. But I had already known. It was like people, I don't even know if people were talking about it. I read about it and it was like, okay, And the minute that I read about it, it was like, okay, then I could feel that the space was opening up for it. It took me 7 years. I had met shamans who came over from Peru, from the Amazon, and I was like, nope, that's not, they were doing ayahuasca. It wasn't about that. And I remember showing up at my colonic therapist, her cabinet in London. Her name was Karamia. And I looked at her and I said, oh my God. I said, what did you do? And she goes, oh, I just did a weekend of ayahuasca. And I said, I need that shaman's name. Now, the shaman that she worked with was Scottish. Okay. So, I mean, I love it. I love it. You can't write this stuff, you know? And so I said, get him on the phone right now. And so she's like, okay, Rhonda, I'll get him on. Cause it was so passionate in me. I'm like, that's the guy. That's who I want to work with. Because I could see it in her field. I mean, I just saw it and I was just like, whoa. So she got him on the phone and he's like, I'm not doing any more ceremonies for a while. I'm going to write a book. I'm like, no, I'm going to fly up with 6 of my friends and we're going to come to Scotland and you're going to do a ceremony for us. And he's like, okay. I must have been really convincing. So 4 months. So that was in October when I had called him, and we weren't going to do the ayahuasca ceremony until I think it was March. And so I knew who I was doing it with, my 6 friends. And so 4 months before we were to do this, so that was in December, this voice came in, and I don't even know where I was. Maybe I was meditating or taking a walk. I don't remember, but I heard this voice, and it wasn't the voice that I was familiar with. And I was just like, who is this? Like, what, who's talking to me right now? And this voice is like, it was so specific, so clear, so precise, and so focused. This is what you're going to do. This is your preparation before doing ayahuasca. And I was like, okay. And it gave me a list of all these things that I needed to do. Like, you know, it was like no coffee, no sex, I want you to do this. I want you to go back to some of the older practices that you had. Like, I want you to start getting your body ready, cold showers, all these little steps. So it's not for everybody. It was just specifically for me. And I didn't even share it with the group that I was going with because it was so much like, this is your path. This is what you were doing. So here I was already preparing. So we get there and it's ceremony night, right? And they had been prepping the ayahuasca for the 3 days before, and they were bringing it up this staircase, and it was already in my body, and I could feel it, and I could hear the voice. Now, I don't know if it's a female or a male, and I'm sure it's different for different people, what it sounds like, but it was this very female, strong mother voice for me. But not like a mother, like something so big and so powerful, kind of like if I thought Gaia had a voice, it would be that, right? And I could feel it already going up my spine. I was like, I don't even need to take the medicine. I mean, it's already here. And I had the most incredible experience. So already it was in me before I drank. And so once I did take the ayahuasca in, I didn't stop moving for 12 hours. Now I couldn't stand up. So I was on all fours moving. And for 12 hours, I did not stop moving. And all I could see was light coming from my body. All I could see was that. It was just light, just coming out of every single part of my entire body. And I remember at the very end, it's like, okay, the work is done. I'm leaving now. And it was like, okay, I grabbed my bowl, out it came. It wasn't violent, it wasn't harsh. And then I felt like I felt like maybe everyone else felt, because the people around me, they were puking, they were going to the toilet. You could see that they were doing some really deep work, but what I felt was it was like I was with Source again, but not Source outside of myself, Source in my body. And I don't know if I had ever felt that way in my life at that point. Up to that point, I didn't feel God inside me. I felt God outside of me. So maybe it was more conceptual than anything, my feeling of God. I mean, it was always there, but not at this level. And I think at that point, I realized that source is in me. And that started a different journey, a different path for me. And that was my ayahuasca, So yes, it was definitely there before. The calling was there 7 years before. And then finally I followed the leads of I felt Christ calling me when I saw my colon therapist. And then I picked up the phone and I heard Christ in this guy's voice. And I'm like, okay, we're coming. So it was very pushy, like, we're coming. I'm sorry you're writing a book, but we're still coming, So it was really fascinating. And that was my connection.
And what transformation follow up this event?
This was the time where I realized that I was Rhonda that was embodying this. It's not a theory. It's not the books. It's not the Course in Miracles. It's not the gurus or the teachers. And it's not even Jesus. This was Rhonda embodying this consciousness. And that's what changed. And how I started to relate to myself was like, this isn't outside of you. This is inside you. So at that point, everything became, I was never a victim from that point. I knew that I was creating my reality because I was source energy. And that was the shift. And that was the point where it was like, you're not a victim anymore. There's nothing being done to you. Everything is coming from what's already in you. So at this point, you get to choose what you want to create. And yeah, I went off the path several times. I believed I was a victim even after that. But there was this deep calling inside me going, you know where you are? You're off your path again. But that's okay because I haven't left you. So when you're ready, softly, you can come back. So it was never really like I needed to achieve anything anymore. I knew where it was. So even if it felt like I wasn't in alignment, I knew that it was always there.
So also you discovered your own authority.
Yeah. That's what that gave me, yes.
Now, coming back to Joe Dispenza and to more pragmatic work. What did you learn from him and what did you took from him in your practices?
Oh, I've learned so much from Joe. One of my favorite things is I just wrote about this in the book that I'm writing, but I'm going to give you an experience. So have you ever done a Joe Dispenza retreat? Okay. It's 7 days of getting up early, being in his world of explaining and having physical meditations that you're doing. And I mean, it's like you're breaking and you're having an understanding of something, you're breaking it down and you're rebuilding it up. That's Joe's work for me. It's like, okay, this is what you think you are. Well, let me have you experience it differently. You break down it all. And then you come through and then you identify something totally different. And for me, Joe's work is just driving you back in. It's just coming from a very science-based way of doing it. It's like using your mind going, okay, let's get to the mind so we can get to the body. And then when we release the body from all the programming, then they're in coherence together, right? So the mind and the heart are in coherence, but we can really play with the heart because that's where the biggest coherence is. And that's really, for me, Joe's work. And something I loved that I'll share with you is that we're at a retreat. I was there with Kate. We're in Malta. And you're up early in the morning and you're doing all the work and it's all day long and you have a group you're a part of. But Joe at this time, and I don't know if he does this anymore, had these activities that you had to do. And so one of the activities is that you had to get up on this platform that was probably about 8 or 9 feet tall, and you're assigned to a group. So I think my group was called Ivory. And so I was a part of this Ivory group, and there's probably 40 of us in here. And you'd be up on the platform and everyone's around and we're holding this tarp and underneath it are like these big cushions, but you couldn't see that. And you had to turn around. And they had a facilitator of the group right there with you, right? But we're all a part of it. We're holding this thing and you have to turn around and you have to let go. And I'm standing there and I'm holding this, and I was at the very end. So we started on the other side and they would get up and go and fall back. And I can tell you, like, this was a place where I learned so much compassion because I'm thinking logically, it's 8 feet. Who cares? And there's cushions underneath us. Logically, it's easy. But when people would get up there, I mean, their bodies would start trembling. They would start shaking. They would start crying. They would start yelling because the fear was so great of letting go of control, right? So as we were going around the circle, my heart just felt bigger and bigger and bigger. And I don't know if I was able to feel that compassion before like I did from that experience, that activity, but it brought it awakened or unlocked a compassion in me that I didn't even know existed. So that was one of the exercises. And the second one was the real monumental exercise for me because, it's so easy for us to use our mind and think, oh yeah, no big deal, we could do this. But there was this huge platform that was created. And in this platform, I don't even know, let's say it's 17 meters. You have to get up, you climb up a ladder, you go on a 2x4. You go to the 2x4 where there's this like spinning top on this one stand and you have to stand on it and then you jump to a rope. And I'm thinking, okay, no big deal. You're harnessed in, like you're safe, right? Everything's safe. You're not going to get hurt. So I'm watching everyone do that. And I've never really felt like I was ever afraid of heights, but I get to the middle of this ladder and all of a sudden, I couldn't put my next foot forward. And I froze. And my mind came in and said, you don't need to prove anything to anyone down there. They don't even know you. You can just go right back down that ladder, right? And I'm thinking, okay, but I mean, I was trying to logically talk to myself and say, okay, and then I could feel the panic and the anxiety was coming. And I literally could not make my leg move the next step up. And I was so scared and I started shaking. And Joe gives you this whole sequence. And the very first thing is stop and look at your surroundings. And I stopped and I looked at my surroundings and I slowed my breath down. And even though my mind was trying to tell me that I didn't have to do this, there was another part, like you hear the two people on your shoulders. There was this other part that going, well, if you don't have to do it, then why can't you do it? And at that point, I was able to say, oh my gosh. So he gives you this whole sequence, stop, look around you, connect to your breath. And through all of that, I took my next step. So I was overcoming my body because there was a fear still locked in my body of death. Right? And I could have told myself I'm not afraid to die, but my body was showing me something different. And that's why I love Joe's work. And it's been so impactful. And through the Kate Powers Foundation, we were able to bring Joe Dispenza to Monaco. And Kate and I had been trying to work on that for quite a long time. And he wasn't allowed to come in. And, people were afraid of his work because it's really about empowering the person. He gives you the tools to empower yourself. And so we were able to bring him here. And I remember promising Kate that, on with her last breath, she said, promise me whatever you do, please keep trying to bring Joe here. Because there's somewhere that science is going to meet spirituality. And this is the place he's needed most, Rhonda. And so I just thought, wow, you know what, Kate, your dream came true. And Joe's work, I think, meets everyone at some level. And yes, his voice is really weird. People tell me, Rhonda, I can't listen to his voice. But, if you can overcome that, or if you can just follow some of his, like what he does, read his books, you don't have to listen to his voice. his work is incredible because it really bridges that mind and heart coherence. It really does. And he gives you some really practical things that allow you to do what I did in that moment where I was afraid, and no matter what I told myself, I couldn't take my next step. And that voice was so strong telling me you don't need to prove anything to anybody. And I'm like, and the other voice came in, but then if you don't have to prove it, why can't you take the next step? And that's kind of spirituality, right? That's our past. It's like sometimes things feel so hard or we don't understand what's going on or there's so much fear there. But when we can get ourselves out of our body from the point that Joe talks about, then we're able to make that next step. And in that, there's liberation.
What part of neuroscience or Joe Dispenza is present in your work today?
Well, it's definitely in the soul purpose coaching because how I understand neuroscience is that we have these neural pathways that are created, and that's attached to programs and basically patterns and belief systems, right? That's also like when I look at it, I see this like this mind, and it's like it's running all of these programs like with energy all the time. And the minute that we are able to redirect the energy, then we're creating a new neural pathway. And when we run that neural pathway enough, those old pathways dissolve. They just diminish, basically. They don't even need to run anymore. And you got to think about it like this, or you don't have to, but what I like to do is think about it like this, is like they say we don't use so much of our brain, but maybe we're just not remembering how to use our brain. Maybe we're actually using it, but we're just not remembering how to use it. And that's what neuroscience brings up. This is where I think it's so powerful, because it's not that we don't, like, that never really resonated with me. Oh, we only use 12% of our brain. Then why is it there? It's like maybe we're using all of it, but we're only remembering 12%. And when we do this kind of work, we begin to remember more and more. And that's why I love neuroscience. And that's why I bring it in to the coaching, the soul purpose coaching. Kundalini yoga definitely taps on that. Breathwork taps on that, because you start to dissolve those old neuro pathways. And you bring new energy and new information into a different part of remembering.
And now, because we were speaking about your work is rooted in Monaco. How do you feel Monaco?
I have a love for Monaco. I have a deep love for Monaco. It was never my plan to come here. We talked about that earlier. It was really never my plan to come here. I was like, I'm moving to the Mayan energy and I want to be in Belize somewhere. But Monaco for me is very special. There is an energy that is here that I didn't really recognize it when I first got here. It took a lot of, like letting go of my own patterns and programs to really pick up the essence of this energy. But for me, Monaco is a place where it's a state of consciousness that allows you to do a certain amount of work that is so powerful, and it opens up your heart in a way that is just incredible. It's like it's a place, a vortex, a space where you can tap in to your light. And that's where I believe Monaco is. At least it's that way for me. And I see it every day. I walk down the street and I just think, oh my God, this is such an amazing place. I don't see a lot of times what the other people see. And this is a really, I think, important thing, is that Monaco is so condensed that you can really feel the energy there. And where you are, it meets you. It meets you where you are. Wherever you are in your life, wherever state of consciousness you are, it'll meet you there. So if you're in a state that you want to have gambling and partying and stuff like that, it meets you. If you're at a state of a higher level of consciousness, it meets you. It's like, it's this transformative place. I call it the crystalline city.
And in the past 20 years, how did you saw the evolution in Monaco? People changing, being more open to spirituality, to personal development. How did you saw all this transition in the past 2 decades?
There's been a huge transition. And I think that also, I want to just honor that it also comes to the people who take care of Monaco, the family, the people who are running the show, even though, people have different opinions about that. For me, it's like, it's evolving. It's evolving because people are in the right place making certain decisions that are letting things free up a lot more than an old reign, you know? And so from the very top, if it's our principality and who's running the show there, I feel that that's changing. I feel like I have someone who's dear to my heart, who's moved into a position that I'm very excited about. And I know him very well, Olivier Viden, and he's such a heartfelt person. And now he's moved into a different position in the palace, working with the prince. And it's like, wow, it's like he's doing meditations. It's like Monaco's evolving in so many ways, but it comes from that too. It's like the family's evolving, the ministry's evolving, Monaco's evolving. And so what is it doing? It's activating the law of attraction. And so the people that are coming are people who are evolved. They're people who are doing and have been doing. They're drawn here because they get to do more personal growth.
And on a large scale, it's also the whole world is evolving and is more open to everything that we are speaking today.
Yeah. If I look back 26 years ago, would I say that Monaco was open? No. But as the world's evolving, as technology's coming in, as we're becoming more aware and more in alignment with our authentic selves, we're giving the opportunity for us to really see the states of consciousness that are being held by the planet. I mean, it's not like it's never been there. It's just that we're waking up to it.
In our evolution, we are creating brands, businesses, projects, and so on that we are attaching to. And they are having a function for ourselves. We attach to them because they are part of our evolution. And also they increase our ego because they are showing us that we are more capable and that we are bringing more to the world. How is it to run a foundation that doesn't carry your name?
I'm going to say that Kate was one of my teachers. I don't know if I realized that at the time, that she was so much of a teacher to me until now. But there's no separation between her and I. Like, I feel her now. So is her name mean anything? Yeah, she had a huge influence on the principality. She changed and opened so many people's hearts. She led, she had a free hug zone. I don't know how many years she had that. Come get free hugs. Like, who does that in the principality? Who did that? But I don't see a separation between Kate and I, or her foundation and I. We had the same mission, really, if we call it that. We had the same desires, and that is to free our minds, to live from our hearts, to be our authentic selves. So is that different than me? No. Maybe the name's different, but she did a lot of work here. She was a pioneer here in this kind of thinking and feeling. So it's an honor for me. Her thing was like, I'm here to serve. It's an honor for me to serve her.
That sounds so beautiful because it seems like a story that is defining completely non-duality and oneness itself. It's not only between you and her, but seems that is a proof, at least for yourself from a subjective point of view, to prove that oneness actually exists. It's not just a concept.
Absolutely. And I think, separation is loosening its grip on humanity. And we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but it's like we don't have to have so much individuality any longer because we're moving in a state of consciousness that allows us to connect with each other. And we don't need, it doesn't need to be Rhonda Hudson, like we've created all this separation so much so far outside, but we're coming back and we're realizing like, consciousness is consciousness and expression is expression. And we can work together, really. We can work together and it doesn't have to have a name. And sometimes it will. And does it really matter? You know, you and I have something really similar that we love, and that's Bashar. That's Daralenka. We love his work. And I love what he says about this. He says, live the most exciting moment, live from your passion, live that.
With no expectations of the outcome. Very important.
Very important. But when we do that, do we need to have a name or do we need to brand something? Maybe. And maybe not. And that's really like it. It's like, follow that. Because maybe at one moment in your life, you want a brand and you want to be this. And then maybe at another moment, you're in a tribe and it doesn't matter who's conscious, who's saying what or doing what or creates what, because it's going back to that indigenous. It's like everyone has their place and you just play in that,
What is your role? What are you in service of?
I'm going to say that I'm not in service. It's funny because I've always gone back and forth. What does that mean? How am I in service? I'm not in service. What my role is I'm here to allow God to meditate through me in every moment that I'm in alignment and an awareness of it. That's the only role I really have.
And going to define also God?
Source, divine, consciousness,
Itself.
creativity. Absolutely. That's my role. And every moment that I can do that, I'm blessed and I guess I'm in service.
How would you define flow, a state of flow, and how one can achieve it?
I'm going to step us back a little bit and slow us down from achieving because I think collectively we're coming out of needing to achieve things and going back into allowing things to show up in our lives, like allowing things to come into being instead of needing to achieve anything. I think when I work with people, the one thing I really address or help them see is that to define what achieving is. So let's go there. Let's talk about that. Yes, we can achieve things, but what are we achieving really? Are we achieving something outside of ourselves or are we achieving something within inside ourselves? And so what does flow feel like inside? Well, that's going to change all the time. That could be dancing. That could be liberation at some level. That could be contraction. I need to say that flow has really no boundaries. It's kind of like love. So when I look at love, I don't see conditions or boundaries or definitions. And for me, it's very similar to what flow feels like. Flow just moves. Sometimes it's contracted. But in those moments, I feel the deeper opportunity for expansion. So if there was achieving flow, I would just say, let yourself feel through all of life. The contraction, the expansion, the joy, the sorrow, the resistance. And that's how flow can show up for you.
Before starting the podcast, we were speaking about the world today, about how it evolved through time, about how, for example, 2012 was an interesting moment for evolution of consciousness in a more rapid way. into people being more open towards different practices, into looking more inside of themselves. And ultimately, I would like to bring the topic of how do we perceive today communities working and the word tribe?
I knew you were going to bring that up. So, yes. So, when we were talking today, I had this vision, and I haven't really ever connected to tribe. The word tribe never really resonated so deeply in me. Um, but what I felt when we were having that conversation earlier is that tribe is just a way for us to commune with each other. And how does that look in today's world? Well, connection, right? Tribe is just how we connect and commune with each other, how we communicate. And we know how we'll do that, how we communicate with ourselves. And we then start to attract the right people or groups of people or the right things that fulfill us in that moment or what we need. Not everything is going to be not challenging. I would say since Kate's transition, since 2021, my dad was diagnosed with dementia. Kate transitioned. My partner broke his pelvis in 11 places. And I think from that perspective and from all of those things, challenging, at one point in my life, I thought, oh, you get cancer, or you have all these challenging things, then you're not doing something right. But going back to your point of tribe is about supporting each other in the challenges without putting a judgment on it. It's like life is about everything. And when you have a tribe, it's almost like, for me, I felt this thing of, it's like, it's your support system, in a sense that they're playing a role for you that allows you to show up more authentically, more for yourself in the good times and the bad times and the challenges and the joys of what this life and this human experience offers. So, what do I feel about tribe? And how do I feel about communities? I think that the world is starting to come back to something that was so indigenous from the very beginning of time. And that is creating a community where you thrive.
And you are also part of the tribe, wherever that is. But moreover, you are a leader in the tribe because you are facilitating and you are bringing together people and you are helping them discover themselves. As a leader, and in this point in your life, Rhonda, what would be the one message that the world needs to hear from you?
The one message that I would love to share, and that is enjoy every moment. Really enjoy every moment, because no matter what, we never know really what the next moment can bring. So if we can be present in this moment right here and right now, in the joy of it, if it's challenging, if it's hard, if it's fun, whatever it is, it's like the one message that I would love to share with everyone is truly where it all happens is in the now, in the present. And the more you can bring yourself back to that, the more that you get to experience.
Thank you for these words and thank you for this discussion. It was a great pleasure and an honor to speak it with you. And I hope in future to have you back here on this chair or to do together different events or activities.
I'm very excited about that, and I'm very blessed to be here, and I'm just so joyful that you are doing this kind of work. It's time, and it's just such an honor to be able to be here with you, to follow what you're doing, to support what you're doing in any way that I can, and to create things together. I'd be honored and blessed to be a part of that. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. As for the rest of you, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Until next time, like this podcast if you liked it. Please comment, share it with your friends, and let us know how we can improve. And until next time, take care of yourself.